He grabbed my keys and said, "Step away from the truck, sir." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because he was standing on my driveway, pointing a gun at me like he owned the place. Behind him, Karen stood with her arms crossed, smiling like she finally won. "I told you," she said loud enough for my kids to hear. "This truck is not allowed here." I stayed calm. Even when one of the men tried to open my door, my son pulled my shirt and whispered, "Dad, are they real cops?" Karen didn't answer him. She waved a paper in my face. Some HOA notice with my address typed wrong, dates crossed out, signatures that looked rushed. "You ignored our rules," she snapped. "Now it's over." Then one of the armed men said something that made my stomach drop. "We're authorized to seize the vehicle. Resist and you'll be detained." That's when I noticed the badge was slightly bent, and the patch color was off. Karen didn't see that. She didn't see my wife step out of the house either. Phone already recording, eyes locked on them, calm in a way that felt dangerous. She leaned close to me and whispered, "Don't say a word." Let them talk. And right then, Karen yelled the line she would regret forever. "If he fights back, arrest him." One of the men shoved my shoulder, hard enough to make my keys fall. Karen clapped once, sharp and proud, like this was a show just for her. "See?" she said. "He's aggressive." My wife slowly stepped forward and said, very calm, "Sir, can you tell me your badge number?" The man froze for half a second, then snapped back, "Ma'am, go inside." She didn't move. She tilted her phone so the camera caught his face, his gun, the fake patch. "Funny," she said softly. "Real officers never forget that part." Karen rolled her eyes. "Stop pretending," she snapped at my wife. "I talked to the HOA president myself. These men are authorized." That's when the second guy whispered to the first, "This is going bad." I saw sweat on his neck. Karen didn't. She walked closer to my wife and pointed a finger inches from her face. "You think filming scares me?" She laughed. "I run this neighborhood." My wife smiled just a little and said, "No, filming protects me." Then she tapped her phone and added, "And it sends my location to people who don't like fake cops." At that moment, a real siren echoed somewhere close. Karen's smile cracked, just for a second. But she still said, "Relax, that's not for us." The siren got louder. Then another joined it. The man holding the gun stepped back, eyes wide now. "Karen, you said this was cleared," he hissed. She snapped at him, "Shut up and do your job." One of my neighbors opened a window. Then another stepped outside with a phone raised. My wife didn't look at Karen anymore. She looked straight at the armed men. "Last chance," she said. "Put the weapons down and walk away." They laughed, but it sounded forced. Then a black SUV rolled in and stopped hard at the end of the street. Doors opened fast. Real officers, real uniforms. Karen's face went pale. "Finally," she said, waving. "They're here to arrest him." The lead officer didn't even glance at me. He walked straight past Karen and said, "Ma'am, step away from the vehicle." Karen blinked. "Excuse me?" My wife lowered her phone and spoke clear and cold. "FBI Joint Task Training, 12 years. These men are not law enforcement." Silence hit the street. One of the fake cops dropped his gun. It clattered loud on the concrete. The officer turned to Karen and asked, "Do you know these men?" Karen opened her mouth, then closed it. And that's when the officer said the words that flipped everything. "Because we traced the call that brought them here. And it came from your phone." Karen started shaking her head fast. No, that's wrong," she said. "I called about a violation, that's all." The officer held up his radio. "You reported an armed suspect stealing HOA property," he said. "You also sent photos of this truck and told dispatch it was under HOA. Seizure." My wife let out a slow breath. "This truck is registered, insured, and parked on private land," she added. "One of the fake cops tried to run. He didn't get far. 2 officers pinned him down in seconds. The other one dropped to his knees and yelled, 'She paid us! She said you wouldn't fight back.' Every phone on the street was recording now. Karen screamed, 'They're lying!' But no one was listening. The officer turned to me and asked, 'Sir, is this your vehicle?' I nodded. 'Paid in full,' I said. Karen snapped back, 'HOA rules override.' That, the officer. looked at her and said something that made the neighbors gasp. There is no active HOA authority over this property. Karen froze. That's impossible, she whispered. My wife finally turned to her and said, You dissolved the HOA last year when you forged those votes. Karen's mouth fell open. She hadn't known we already had the files. And the next twist was coming. Karen stumbled back like the ground moved under her. You're bluffing, she said, but her voice cracked. My wife tapped her phone again. County records don't bluff, she replied. One officer checked his tablet and nodded. HOA status shows inactive. Fraud under review. Karen suddenly yelled, That truck is still illegal, and pointed at it like it could save her. The officer walked around it once, slow. Veteran plate, he said. Then he looked at me. You serve? I nodded. 2 tours, Karen scoffed. That doesn't matter. The officer turned to her, eyes hard. It does when you file false armed threat reports. My daughter started crying. Karen snapped at her, Control your kid! That was the moment the mood changed. My wife stepped in front of our children and said quietly, You just crossed a line. She showed the officer another clip. Karen on video from last week saying, If fear works, use it. One of the neighbors whispered. She's done. Karen saw the phones. The officers, the cuffs coming out. She tried one last move. I'm friends with the mayor, she said. The officer replied, Then he'll hear about this tonight. And as the cuffs clicked on her wrist, Karen finally understood something she never expected. She had judged the wrong family. Karen screamed that it was all a setup, that everyone here was against her. No one answered. The officer read her rights while she kept looking at my truck like it betrayed her. One neighbor stepped forward and said, She did this to us too. Another voice followed. And us. My wife didn't smile. She just watched. The officer asked me if I wanted to press charges. I looked at my kids, still shaking, and said, Yes. Karen snapped her head toward me. You can't, she said. I protect this place. The officer replied, You terrorized it. Then another patrol car pulled in, slower this time. A man stepped out, suit under his jacket. He walked straight to my wife and nodded with respect. Karen saw that and whispered, Who is he? My wife answered without looking at her. The one who trained me. The man turned to the officers and said, Add intimidation, child endangerment, and impersonation. Karen's knees almost gave out. As she was walked past the neighbors, someone said, Freedom looks good on you. She thought it was for her. It wasn't. And while the cars drove away, I stood on my driveway, hand on my truck, knowing this wasn't just about rules anymore. It was about taking back our ground. The street went quiet after the sirens faded, but the tension stayed in the air. Officers were still talking, writing, checking footage from every phone. One of them came back to me and said, Sir, you might want to hear this. He played a call recording, Karen's voice clear and angry, saying, Bring men with guns. He scares easy. My wife closed her eyes for a second. That hurt more than the guns. The officer shook his head. This goes federal now. I thought it was over. It wasn't. A tow truck rolled in. My heart dropped. The driver jumped out and said, I'm here for the black pickup. Karen had called it in earlier, and it was already processed. The officer stopped him. Who sent you? The driver checked his phone and said, HOA emergency line? My wife laughed once, short and sharp. That line redirects to Karen's personal number. The officer looked stunned. She was still trying, even in cuffs. Then he said the line that stuck with everyone standing there. Some people don't lose power quietly. The tow truck left. My truck stayed. My family stayed, and as the sun started to set, I realized something scary and satisfying at the same time. Karen didn't just fall today. Everything she touched was about to come out. That night, my kids slept in the living room close to us. The house felt different. Safer, but heavier, too. My wife sat at the table, still going through messages, warrants, names tied to Karen. This is bigger than her, she said. She used fear like a tool. The next morning, a county notice went up, not on our door, but on the HOA board. HOA officially terminated. Investigation ongoing. Neighbors stopped by one, some with thanks, some with quiet tears. A man shook my hand and said, "I almost sold my house because of her." I looked at my truck, still parked where it always was. No chains, no threats, just mine. My wife finally relaxed and leaned against me. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "I didn't fight for this country," I said slowly. "To be scared on my own driveway." She smiled at that. Later, my son asked, "Dad, are bad people always that loud?" I told him, "Only until the truth shows up." Karen thought power came from papers and shouting. She was wrong. Power came from knowing the law, protecting family, and standing your ground when it mattered. And that's the line people remembered. Freedom doesn't need permission. The end of the story is simple but powerful. Karen was arrested, exposed for her fake threats and misuse of power. The armed imposters she sent were caught, and the authorities confirmed that my property and family were completely safe. Our truck stayed where it belonged. Our home felt secure, and the neighborhood finally knew the truth about her. My wife's training, our preparation, and the law worked together to protect us. Standing on our driveway, watching the sun set, I realized that justice doesn't always come quietly, but when it does, it's unforgettable. Freedom, family, and truth won that day.